call the meeting to order. And we will note the presence of the members, Vicky Kahn, Ed Wisnowski, Susan Clark, Janet Johnson, the secretary, Martha Green, David Wilcox, liaison from Land Management, Tim Ganettis, Sarah Fleet, Tara Cody, and Bill Hine. On the telephone, Stephanie Davis, and I believe that's it. Did I miss anyone? We did not. Okay, in terms of proceeding, it was mentioned that we have the flag on the screen and the Pledge of Allegiance, and we would begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty
and justice
for all.
Thank you. If there is no objection, I would like to amend the sequence of business on the agenda that was issued so that we can get to the matters that require voting first and do the review of applications that proceed by consensus.
Ed, we're losing your sound when you turn your head.
Thanks for the on that. I will try to put things in front of me. If there's no objection, that's what we'll do. Hearing none, okay, that would first provide us with the opportunity to approve the minutes of the last meeting. The minutes were circulated by Stephanie, and that meeting was the meeting of February 18th, 2020. You've all had a chance to review. Are there any comments or adjustments to be made to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor of adopting the minutes as distributed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes are adopted. The next two matters for us to have an official vote on would be the certificates of appropriateness that apply to 17 Huntington Lane, Flanders, and to the Meadow Conservancy of Sagaponic. Earlier, a resolution was distributed. We'll do 17 Huntington Lane, Flanders first. Tim, would you want to just make a summary of what
Sure.
you observed?
Sure. There are two COA applications. The first was to legalize the existing driveway gates that were present when the property was landmarked. So I really wouldn't see much issue with that, as it's just allowing everything to remain as is. The second was to construct a swimming pool, spa, terrace, pool control fence, as well as relocate the driveway and front walk approach to the house. Judging from the land clearing and other things they've done, any landscaping that is added will be an improvement to the historic resource, because right now it's just kind of open, barren grass and gravel. This location, the proposed location of the pool, is nice because it still allows for that view corridor from the approach of the house via the driveway, and allows you to see both the historic resource and the water as well. I don't have any objection to the proposed. I think it's a sensitive solution that allows them to have the swimming pool, but have it not detract from the house.
Okay, thanks. I agree wholeheartedly, and as I responded to your report, I appreciate how focused and how it encapsulated all the issues that that were there.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can bring up the resolution for that. Okay, and Bill, you had sent me a little amendment, or I should say some editorial typo type things, and I have made the adjustments.
Okay.
And basically, there's, as far as I can see, no conditions for modifying the application for the pool as Tim had outlined. So if there's discussion of this.
Ed, I might be able to pull it up if you wanted to read it.
Well, I have, oh, is it not being shared?
Yeah, we don't see the reso.
Oh, let me find out about that. It says you are screen sharing, and but let me go back and I have to screen share on a different. Here we go. You see it now?
There
Yes.
we go.
Yes.
Okay. So the basic problem of the driveway gate installation, it was there when we landmarked it, and there was a bit of a conundrum associated with this in terms of do you issue a certificate of appropriateness on something that has been done before and not legalized through the building department procedures. We didn't want to establish any kind of precedent, because somebody does something to a landmark building that is totally inappropriate and really egregious. There is a possibility of requiring them to undo what they did. But in this case, this was not one of those problems. And the second request there is to put in a spa, and I tried to make it explicit that it's not just any old kind of spa. It has to be sized appropriate to the survey maps that they have provided, because they're not building the spa right at this moment, but it's shown in a very small proportion relative to the patio and the swimming pool size. So is there a motion to approve?
Sure.
Who's making the motion? I did. Okay, Martha. Martha Green moves. And is there a second?
Second,
Who is the seconder?
Vicky.
Vicky? Okay. That helps. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And you can raise your hand if you wish to, so that helps confirm. Okay, very good. The next voting is for the Madhu for the Madhu Conservancy for the replacement of the loo It basically has been distributed before for our several meetings where this discussion has or has not taken place in the case of our canceled March meeting. And has the modifications that we have had some discussion of before about the new building when it's built to be documented, and signage that it's a reproduction, and the effort to preserve the garden plantings to the maximum extent possible, and to also not alter the garden topography and landscape elements when they are building. The town board has scheduled a public hearing on this for June 9th. And to make it clear to the town board that we have reviewed and are in favor of what Madhu will do if they do amend the easement, this resolution will provide that confirmation for the town board. I should say we did have a meeting, I think, David, was in March, that the town board briefly considered this item.
I don't recall if it was on the agenda or not. I think it was scheduled to be.
Well, in any case, yeah, everybody seems to be on board. There was a little question from the supervisor at the time who asked whether or not the building was part of the evaluation of the property that was part of the payments made for the easement. And it turned out, no, the lieu was not included in any of the value of the easement calculation. So other than that, everybody seems to be on board with this. And the Madhu Conservancy has said that the new building will be subject to review.
It's this far along, and we've reviewed it, and without having somebody like one of our resident landmark boards architects look at it, but I didn't see any failure or any damage, and none was noted in the engineer's report when it was placed on the foundation over a year ago, and there was no reported rot or other kinds of damages that you usually might see if someone was requesting a demolition. So the engineer noted that the beams could be you could have reinforced the beams and add new beams as needed. And in my opinion, that would be my recommendation. It would be to object to the demolition, and then to recommend that they reinforce and do the new beams. And the backstory on this, this is an Atterbury barn. It was on Atterbury property. It did not show up. I mean, according to the research I did for it previously, it did not show up originally. And so we don't know exactly when it was placed in this position, but it was not there on the 1902 and the 1916 maps. But if you look at the town records, Estelle Atterbury, Grosvenor Atterbury's wife, was the owner of it when it was sold. I think it was in the 70s. So it has some connection to the Atterbury family, but more research would have to be needed if Grosvenor was all involved in this. But just because the association and the fact that it is on the in the Southampton Historic Resources Survey from 2014, it was the Shinnecock Hills number 7 that it was a recognized resource at that time. It has the picture and the explanation of it. That based on that we object and recommend that they reinforce and add new beams as necessary. So I'm not sure if either Bill or Tim have any opinion by looking at that, or Vicky, who was there, but that's looking at the pictures itself. That's my recommendation.
It seems to have changed hands according to Zillow in 2018, and there's a lot of interior pictures of what they've ripped out.
Okay.
Which doesn't look, I mean, if one of the architects would have a look, I'd be very grateful, because it doesn't look terrible.
Okay. I don't think it's changed hands. To my knowledge, the same person has had it since this project started. It's been the same people. That's when it changed hands.
Yes, it's not on the market now.
Okay.
But it sold a few years ago.
Yeah.
According to this. And you can see there's a lot of beams and nice paneling in it. And it was in, I mean, obviously you can't tell, but didn't look in terrible nick.
I don't see any, I agree with Susan. I don't understand why they wanted to model.
Yeah.
It was not clear to me, I've been to the site now 3 times, and I don't understand the application.
And if it is a span problem, I think what you had said earlier about adding intermediate joists or girders or something else for it to shorten the span would be the approach you would take.
Particularly, it seemed like the owners, I mean, from what I saw, they were doing the right thing, in my opinion. They were trying to preserve it, and I think they should continue on that path, because they offered to do a reproduction in kind, try to reuse some of the windows, but once that's done, it's basically gone. So right now, we still at least have the structure. They have the structure, and if it should be supported, as the engineer mentioned, it could happen. He said reinforce and new beams. I think that would be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So my recommendation is to object and recommend that they follow that path that the engineer had suggested as an alternative.
One of the things that strikes me about this project is that they have proceeded kind of step by step to try to preserve the original building. That they seem to have made serious effort, putting in a new foundation, raising the building, putting in a new foundation.
Yeah.
And then I think their problem might stem from the fact that when a building was built years ago, the structural members don't meet the kind of code requirements that we have today, and the buildings have more structural strength. And I know that it looked like the floor plans that they had were kind of open space floor plans, which don't allow the kind of internal structural support members that you might want to have. I think they did travel a road carefully, and they got to the point where what they're trying to do with a house and what may be required to successfully accomplish that, they got squeezed by those 2 things. I'm not enough of myself, knowledgeable about, what the whole business would be to reinforce a building, and what it might do to compromise the interior design elements that they were seeking. So I have mixed feelings about objecting because I think they proceeded in good faith. And, sometimes I notice, in the past, people open up old buildings and start remodeling them, and they think they're pulling on a limited length of string, and it turns out it's a very long pull of string that things get more complicated down the road.
I guess it's one of the things that I think I may have commented at the time that they requested a waiver for the engineer's report when they were doing this, and we gave them the waiver, but that would have been, of course, the time to get the engineer's report. But that's in hindsight. I don't know if there was a possibility of saving it, but I hear what you're saying. They did make an effort. But I would prefer, I don't think we can postpone this for another month, that either, if Tim or if Bill or if Jeff, of course, someone who's one of the architects could look at it, but I don't think we have that option at this point. We received it March 30th, and I think they want a decision.
Well, building has not been proceeding in Southampton town
Right.
of late, so that probably will hold up until May 15th at least, I guess. So I'm also just one other element, because they were committed to replicating the building in its character and its size on the existing footprint, that I thought, that shows that, there was an effort to kind of preserve it, or at least look at preserving the character associated with it. And, it would be a new structure, except for whatever windows they might want to retrieve. So, as I say, I really have mixed feelings about criticizing their approach at this point in time.
Do you feel that we should make a decision now, or wait till somebody could actually go in and take a look at it?
Well, before that, do we have any volunteers who are willing to, if the occasion presents itself, to take a peek at it? It is, it will be an effort to get somebody to look at it in an appointed time.
It looked like it was, if somebody had permission, it looks like it was open. Wasn't it open, Vicki?
Yes, it's open. You can definitely get in. From what I remember, there was an area that you could definitely get into. They have it, most of it blocked off, but I think you could manage to get in. But I wouldn't want to get in without, they're okay, because we may have to remove a board or something. So we definitely would need to notify them. And if they've done anything that was different from the previous interior sort of glimpse, that would, make it unsafe to walk through, we'd need to know that also.
Right, I agree.
Okay, well, I'd be willing to go and take a look at it if I can get inside it and see it.
I'm happy to go with you, Bill.
Okay.
Bill, would it be useful to be in contact with the architect or engineer to get whatever concern, a more focused concern on their part, if you visit?
Yes. Yeah, it'd be good to have either them at that meeting, to go into the house with them, or if I can get, I haven't really looked at the application, so I'd have to see what kind of drawings they provided.
They provided the same drawings that they had by a design company, the same ones they submitted for the construction, the renovation. They presented those same plans again. So there weren't, I think, Menino Carmichael Design, Arc Studio, they presented, I mean, gave the plans in May 2019, and they were the same ones that were part of this application.
Okay.
This time there was an engineer was added. You'll find his name in the application.
I don't think it's appropriate for members to be going out to the site and visiting with architects.
Okay. They may not want us going there, insurance reasons and things like that, if the house is sort of in disrepair or something.
I'm just saying our directive so far has been that we're not to go out to any sites.
Right.
After May 15th?
I don't know what will happen after May 15th.
Okay.
Well, one thing we can do, we can postpone further consideration until we have more information on this, and that potentially would be considered at a June 21st or thereabouts meeting. And if the applicants wish, maybe they can proceed to the building department and say, well, we've had the 45 days and, we should be ignored.
All time periods are on hold because of New York State laws. There are no legal time periods in place right now.
Wow. I did not know that, but okay, thanks for the info.
That's from the town attorney's office.
Okay. So is there any problem with postponing this until a June meeting? If not, that's what we'll do then.
Can't they make, can they make a telephone call to architects or the submitters to talk to one of the architects on our board to see if they could give it more information?
That's certainly acceptable.
Yeah. Bill?
Yes.
Are you inclined to undertake another management task with another case?
Sure.
Okay, it's yours to organize and communicate and evaluate.
Okay, will do.
Bill, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bill has the expertise.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, having passed on that, we will proceed to the construction permit applications. And the first one that is on our agenda is just one to note for the record. That is the 828 Flanders Road, which was an application to repair fire damage. And after a screening review, I believe it was Stephanie who communicated communicated to the building department that we did not need to have a further review of this application. The next application after that is 54 Fanning Avenue, Hampton Bays. The application involves a proposed laundry room conversion for a residence that was built about the year 1931. And I believe, Sarah, you did forward reports.
I did. But
to us today. Let me see if
I did forward the reports. But it was basically, I have no objections. There's no change to the structure or the footprint whatsoever. They're not adding a window. They're just converting this interior room, and so it doesn't really affect the outside at all, and everything should be untouched.
And my notes say work done, but would have to look at the application when I reviewed it before. So I think they may have already been.
Go inside to see that, but
No, but I'm just saying, it obviously didn't change the exterior if it's right.
Yeah.
So, and I agree, I believe Susan is correct. I think in the application it said the work was complete. And basically legitimize the new bathroom. Are there any other concerns or comments about this property?
Nope.
If not, there is then there's no objection to be filed with the building department. And I can do that, Sarah, if you want.
Sure.
Okay, I'll take that up.
Thank you.
And also the ram pasture, is the next one, 33
Right.
pasture.
The ram pasture, again, I had no objections to they're having water leaking into the facility, so they've and they already gotten some permission from the building department to work on the roof to stop the water from entering the building, but there is no changes proposed. They just want to maintain it and secure it.
Okay, and I agree. They had gotten emergency approval from the chief building inspector to do emergency repairs, at least.
Right.
So, any comments or concerns? If not, then there will be a no objection, and I can do that as well, Sarah.
Okay.
358 Montauk Highway Eastport, solar panel installation.
Yes. This application originally came to us for solar panel installation in February of 2017. And Stephanie did a report at that time. They were doing less panels at that point, but the one that we're objecting to now was on the first application and is on this one. The reason we're objecting is because in our, what was it, our January meeting, we did a consensus that any solar panels on the front of an historic resource should be objected to. And there are other locations that the panels could be put. There's a detached garage. They're putting panels on the east side. They could also do them on the west side. The house faces the road. The south side faces the road. They do plan on putting some there. They also have a west-facing roof on that house. To the left side, they're putting some there. They could put some on the attached garage as well there. And it seems like there's more area that we're suggesting they could put them than the area where we're objecting to them having them. So even though we didn't object to the application in 2017, I objected to the 2020 application only because 2 months ago we had made the consensus that we would try and get them off the front of houses if possible.
And I remember that discussion, and that was, something that was pretty clear.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I didn't think we should, even though I included some of Stephanie's report in my report, I don't think we need to go through it all again, being that we had done it already in 2017. I did include 3 photos of the house in the report that show it at different times. The massings all stayed the same, but at one point it was white, then it became blue, then it became vinyl siding, which it is now. So it has lost a lot of its exterior historic fabric, but still, it's on Montauk Highway. It's very visible from the street. Whether you're heading east or west, you see it. So I don't object to the panels elsewhere. I just wanted to object to the ones on the front of the house.
And would you make recommendations as to alternative?
Yes. Yeah. There's 2 other locations. Yeah. The original application had them in 2 locations. The current application has them in 3 locations. They've added additional panels to the system, but there's still room on the detached garage and the attached garage where we could add more.
Okay, any comments from our members? So we want to file an objection with recommendations to adjust the installation. And that is the consensus of the board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And we can then, Bill, do you want to file the response with your comments and recommendations?
Yes, yep, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Ed, at this point, I wanted to add, we may need to update the response forms to change, to add Janice to them.
To add?
Janice Shear, I think we still have Kyle on the response forms. I just thought of that last night.
That may be yours, it's not mine.
Okay, okay.
But
I think we can do it on our own, but that's just a reminder.
Right, okay. Well, thanks for just making a note of it for all of us to be aware to update the letterheads that we use.
Exactly.
All right. Okay, 8 Baycrest Avenue as well.
Yes. There's a single-story dwelling here and a detached garage. Both structures are visible from Baycrest Avenue. It is identified in the AKRF. The AKRF dates it to 1920. The property is not mentioned in the 2004 historic profiles of Eastport, Spionk, Remsenburg, and West Hampton. The existing dwelling is very modest in size, but it will be altered to receive an extremely large addition. The garage is currently being converted into a pool house, and there's a stop work order on it. I believe they had a permit to do a swimming pool. The swimming pool is also under construction. It's weird, there's no information in the town GIS system. Although we got tax records with the application, there's nothing available in the GIS. For some reason, when you go to it, the forms are all blank in their file. On the 1873 map, there's no structures on this property. It's vacant, owned by J.W. Bishop and W. Bishop. On the 1902 map, and in fact, there is no Baycrest Avenue. In the 1902 map, Baycrest Avenue is shown as proposed. It has not yet been named. There's a couple of residences along it. The subject property is still vacant, but now owned by N.B. Rogers, who owned many properties in the West Hampton area at that time. The 1916 map shows the property still undeveloped and still owned by N.B. Rogers. This information indicates that the property was not developed until after 1916, which is consistent with the AKRF circa 1920 age. In the AKRF, they state, although the building is not known to possess individual significance, it may be eligible as part of a grouping. And then they go on to say that it's landmark eligible under Town Criterion C. In the immediate area, there are 12 historic resources. 6 of them are on Baycrest Avenue. 2 of them are adjacent to number 8, the subject property, 6 and 10. And it is visible from 4 different historic resources. So you can see why they thought it was part of a grouping. I did include the architect's drawing circling the original house on it. It's a quarter of the front elevation is the existing house. The other 3/4 is all the new house. They are changing the windows from 6/1 to 2/1. They're taking out the front door. They're taking off the little front porch. They're adding awnings over the front windows and a shed dormer on the left-hand side. So it's going to be fairly, unless you're just looking for the form of it, it's going to be something that you can't identify the original house anymore. The changes to it and the addition that overpowers it so much are going to make it so that you don't really recognize the original house at all. So I was glad they were saving it, but then I was upset that it was sort of going to be something that you wouldn't recognize anymore anyway. So I wasn't sure whether to object to it or, because they're saving it, to not object to it. So I was wondering what others thought.
To the degree that there are associated, I shouldn't say associated, but they are neighborhood historic resources.
Mm-hmm.
This might disturb any kind of context for a historic district to be created among this grouping of houses.
I would say so, yes. And just to be noted, this is 8. Just to the left of it is 6. And the same people who purchased 8 have purchased 6 and plan to do something to that one as well. So we're about to lose that one. They plan on keeping it the same as they've kept it here, but with enough modifications that, again, it won't be identified as the original house.
Well, interesting kind of problem.
Yes.
And but I'm not familiar with the neighborhood myself, but
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how much identification does it have as a cluster of houses and neighborhood? I mean, is there a good sense of people who live in the community that these are all kind of associated together as like structures with a common period of development?
I would say yes. And they're all very modest sized homes. So you do understand that somebody's going to want to add on to it. But I think this is going to be one of the largest houses in that section of the road. So it was tough to make a decision. I'd hate to say, just knock it down and build a big house there. But then again, not being able to recognize the original house, it's sort of lost to time anyway.
Yeah, just to add a little bit here, this is Stephanie. This neighborhood is to the north of the historic Culvertown neighborhood, and a little bit south of historic Civil War era and older neighborhood. It's kind of an infill area, and you could kind of see that in the early 1900s maps where the land had been subdivided but was not yet developed. I'm not aware of any family or sort of neighborhood characteristics of this immediate area. If this was one of the older houses up on Mill Road in the Civil War area neighborhood, or further south in Culvertown, I would feel more strongly about it. But while it's quaint and cute, the proposed work is essentially going to obliterate what is there. So I personally don't have any strong opinions about what essentially is going to be a loss of this house. And David, I don't know if you have any knowledge of family history here at all or not, but that's my feeling about it.
No, I don't.
No. Well, we're all kind of lukewarm on our feelings as to whether it's objectionable or whether it's acceptable. And I would say, in terms of not having strong feelings, that we that we not object, and chalk it up to a learning experience for ourselves in terms of all the possibilities that can happen to a house that has some character to it in the community.
Okay.
Is that okay with everyone?
Agreed.
No.
I mean, it's
Okay.
okay.
All right. Thanks on that, Bill.
Okay. And I'll do a response for that one as well.
Okay, fine. You've done a lot already, but
I defer to Stephanie and Bill because they know the location of the house better than I do. So.
okay, 142 Mary's Lane, North Sea. Jeff, if he was going to be on the phone, said he had visited that. This is for renovations to put in a home office in the house and to rearrange a basement window. Unfortunately, I don't think the pictures are very good. Oh, there are a whole bunch of pictures, but not potentially instructive in terms of anything that we have to evaluate. As far as I can see, that most of the renovation is going to take place it's the existing house, it's the existing footprint. It's not changing the visual character of the house, which we don't have a good picture here, but
It appears to be mostly interior, though, doesn't it? Except for the one door. To me, it was an.
Yeah, there was an egress window. I think that was the only exterior thing that I saw.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I don't find it a problem at all. So I don't know if anyone else does.
No.
Nope.
Okay, so if there's no other comment, we'll register it as no objection, and I'll file the paperwork on it. The next item on the agenda is an old neighborhood we've been to several times, 75 Narrad Boulevard in Watermill, with which Susan has become very familiar over the years. And
would you like me to summarize it?
yes, if you would, Susan.
It has an AYB that was an actual year built of 1950, but that's appears to be incorrect because it's on the 1930 aerial map. Therefore, it's probably built circa 1920s, maybe late 1920s, like a number of other houses in the neighborhood. But it would have been one of the original ones of a very, very early subdivision. I'm trying to think. This, particular house. It's for a small construction project. If you look to the right, and thank you, Vicki, for taking these photos also. If you look to the right on that, on the left second photo, that's the particular area that's going to be worked on. That small gabled section, which was probably added at some later point, even though I could find no building permit for it, is going to be changed, and they're going to remove that small one-story sunroom and replace it with a small one-story flat roof screen porch with a balcony, deck, balustrade above, and also an access door to access that second floor deck in place of a window. So it is not in AKRF, even though there seem to be a group of them that were built by a man named Doran. That's Narrad, spelt backwards. But Doran was the builder of a number of these houses in the late 20s. But this isn't going to be much of a change, so I have no objection, and I don't think Vicki did either. So it's just going to be swapping one replacement type section for another. I don't think it will deter from it.
Totally agree.
Okay. I'm somewhat familiar with the neighborhood too, down there. So I don't object to what they're planning. Are there any other comments?
There's a door.
Well, hearing none, then we will. And Susan, you want me to file the paperwork?
It's up to you. I can do it or you can do it. It makes no difference.
Why don't you do it?
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay. Keep you busy in Florida.
Yeah, well, I'll be home shortly. But we do it, I assume there's no timeline, there's no work from what David said occurring if this isn't done for a couple days here or there. Is that what I understand?
My understanding from the town attorney's office is that any sort of legal time periods are on hold.
Okay, but I will get that in there as soon as possible.
Okay. 97 Tower Point Road, North Sea. An exterior deck renovation for a building with an AYB of 1928. And I have not personally looked at this. I don't know if anyone else has.
Oh, we've reviewed that several times. Once was May 2019. So I drove past it, and I think this is just amending what we previously reviewed and didn't object to. So I haven't been by recently, but it's just a change of plans that we've already reviewed and not objected to.
Mm-hmm.
It's an altered structure. It has an AYB of 1928. It's not an AKRF. It sits to the right on Tower Point Road, and there were a lot of different kinds of additions and renovations already have been done to the structure.
So yes, they point out May 21st, 2019, we looked at it.
Yeah.
So anybody else have any?
Nope.
Any concern about it? All right, so we'll clear that with a no objection.
concern.
Right.
.478 Montauk Highway East.
Okay. This house is not identified in the AKRF, but it is recognized in the East Quogue Hamlet Heritage Area Report and indicated as the R.P. Squires / C.W. Brown home and constructed in circa 1900. There is a house with the same general configuration shown on the 1902 map and again indicated as R.P. Squires. And then later on the 1916 historic map indicated as C.W. Brown. There's an accessory structure that also appears to be shown on the rear of this property on these maps. The proposed work is interior renovations that will then result in replacement of 5 windows and the removal of 1 exterior door. Extensive work has already been done on the structures. There's a certificate of occupancy from 1969 stating that it was done prior to 1957. It calls it a one 2-story frame house, a barn and a shed. The current tax records show the AYB of the house is 1920, an open porch built on the house in 1960, pool in 2002, and then the other building they call a cabana boathouse was also built in 1968. So kind of makes you wonder what happened to the accessory structure that was on the earlier maps if now the boathouse is 1968. There's no work going to be visible from the front of the house. The elimination of the doors on the rear of the house, I had no objection to that. The 5 windows that are being replaced are currently double hung windows that are all 2/2, and they're going to replace them with awning windows, I believe, to make them conform to the current egress requirements from code. So I didn't want to object to making the house safer. 4 of those windows will be replaced with the same size windows. 1 of them will be in a bathroom, so they're going to cut it in half, make it the same width, but only half as tall. I had no objection to it. They're mainly on the sides of the house, not highly visible from the street. I don't see changing them from double hungs to casements is that big of a change. I did want to suggest, though, that when they purchase the windows, they do a heavier sort of mullion in the center of the window horizontally that would look like the lock rail of a double hung window, and then the smaller verticals to make it look like 2/2, so that at least it emulated the original windows. So otherwise I had no objection. I just had an objection with a recommendation.
Looks like a lot of work.
What looks like a lot of work?
A lot of work was being done.
Is there a work in progress on that, Bill?
Yes, they were working on it. They were already doing the interior renovations, but they hadn't done anything to the windows yet. But
Work was in the interior. Okay.
right. Right. The bulk of the work is interior, but it will show up in these 5 windows.
So any comments or concerns? Okay, without any expression, Bill, do you want to make those recommendations on the response that you file?
Yes. Yep. I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. "431 McGee Street, Tuckahoe."
Would you like me to address that one?
Yes, Susan. This is another one of your favorite neighborhoods.
Yeah, I've been there before, and it is interesting. It's on the west side across the street from, well, it's a little down from it, but from the Tuckahoe School. And there is a little grouping of houses there, which are interesting, a lot of Dutch gambrel. This particular house has been for sale. I don't know, was it for sale last year? And Sheila and I were following it ever since we heard that. But this is an interesting house. It looks like there have been some alterations. So it was in the 8KRF table, but it is not listed as a resource because it said it needed further research. Also, that it looked like that porch had been, the front porch had been enclosed at some point, and I agreed to that. And also, it appears that the exterior, if you look to the rear, there's a flat, semi-flat roofed structure. And if you look at the overhead, you can actually see a partial turret. So it looks like it was added. I think if you go down, you have to go down past the, into the, okay, one more page. Let's see. Right there, if you look at that one, you can see a little bit to the rear behind that chimney, that in different angles, you get a better picture that you could see there was a partial turret. But this is just to lift it up and put it on a foundation. So that's all we're discussing at this point. It has been in front of the ZBA. It was approved. They wanted to add an artist studio to the rear of the property, and it's 1.39 acres. That's already been completed. But this property, I think, is interesting because it's one of a group of houses owned by the Smith brothers. And we looked at one at 471, which was Truman Smith's, and this one belonged to Marvin. Their grandfather, Nathaniel Erastus Hubbard, had a farm in the area right to the left of where the Southampton Golf Club is now, and that house was demolished, I think, several years ago. But anyways, they were the grandchildren, but their mother married a Hewitt Smith, and they went to live in the city for a while, and Hewitt drowned in the East River. So Jenny appeared to come back. She died several years later, and from what I gather reading, that the children went to live with relatives. And there's some different, they had some little antics they got into as children that actually made the news. But as they grew older, they seemed to have apprenticed to be carpenters and painters. So this house itself, according to his granddaughter's obituary, he built the house. So Marvin built this house around 1905, and that's the year AYB. And I'm adding to the report that I was finally able to get into the FamilySearch.org deeds, and I found a deed from April 1906 that Marvin purchased the property from Charles E. Sanford, who had a property on the corner. I thought he had maybe inherited it from, he was part of the Hubbard family, and grandson of the Hubbard. I thought he had gotten it, just being the Hubbards. But it appears the three Smith brothers purchased land from Charles E. Sanford, who seemed to be related to a Charles Payne, who had a house for a long time in the area. But they lived there after Marvin built it, and he was, for one thing, his grandfather was active in the Southampton Methodist Church, and Marvin's family was also. There are a number of indications that they, in fact, Marvin, I think, was superintendent when they were building their Sunday school. They rented to a Dr. Ridgway, who came out from the city, and his family, who was also involved in the church. But there's an interesting history. It's related to the Smith and Hubbard family. And I'm pleased to see that the new owners are likely going to preserve it, as they are putting it on that new foundation. So I have no objection to this. And I guess we'll be waiting to, I assume, get another application when they decided to proceed with construction.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on this? I don't see that there's any objection. And Susan, would you want to also
Sure.
do the paperwork on that?
Yep, I will do that.
All right, thank you. Okay, on to the remainder of the agenda. We've already covered two of the certificate appropriateness. The Lizen Hat Shop needs an application to be filed for the sign. The sign is something that, in my passage through Hampton Bays, seems totally appropriate, but all that would need to be done was to get an application and get approval for its installation.
I'll try to get a hold of Brenda again and see if she can submit.
Yeah, I think it's basically just the paperwork exercise. I don't think it's controversial about it. No. Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Sarah, I'm going to forward you, when we get done, some photographs I took recently of the sign, and then Brenda sent me a photograph showing the former sign that was removed. So it's basically the only difference between what's there now and what was there in the past is there used to be matching signs on either side of the hat shop. There's only one sign now.
Right.
So I think we have the information we need to do the application. And I think it would be helpful if we could just assist Brenda with getting the application done.
Okay, I'll take care of that.
Okay.
All right, thanks for the update, Stephanie. On to referrals. 94 Dune Road, Beach Club, site redevelopment.
Yeah, this is a proposed redevelopment that is with the ZBA. Susan picked up on it, and they don't normally refer matters to us, but because this property, I have heard anecdotal evidence about having a historic sail loft on it, I requested the materials for the proposed redevelopment. This is the Dockers property on Dune Road, which contains several structures, and the structure of interest forms essentially the core of the restaurant now. It's a two-story building that is kind of barnish in appearance. The interior, of course, no longer resembles a barn. And the proposed application involves demolition of all the structures on the property and redevelopment with, I think it was condos or something or other. It's a rather large-scale development, and I'm sure it's got a number of other hurdles it's going to have to pass over. But I did a little looking into the history of the property. This structure was present, the sail loft was present in 1994 and 1978, but it was not present in 1962. The property used to be owned by a William Swan, who was an attorney in East Quogue, relatively well known. He was characterized in the Southampton Press at one point as a lawyer and real estate developer who was one of the biggest taxpayers in the town of Southampton because of the amount of property he owned. And Mr. Swan did a rather large dredging project and made a bit of a marina there back in about 1969, and I was able to find the permit for that project. It's so-called Frank's Channel there that got dredged, and it was about that time that this sail loft appeared, and it was referred to anecdotally as Bill Swan's sail loft. So I don't know where this structure originally came from, but it was most likely moved at about the time the dredging was done and probably was viewed as some sort of marina support structure. So the bottom line here is I don't really know the history of the structure other than it appeared about the time the dredging got done. I have no idea where it came from or what it was used for. So I don't see any reason to carry a discussion back to the ZBA about a historic structure here because I can't seem to document the history. Bill Swan passed away in 1998, so we can't go back to him to get any more information. So I think that's where it sits.
So your suggestion is that we just thank the ZBA for the referral, and we are satisfied that there's no reason for us to be concerned. Yes?
We requested, I don't think we don't receive referrals from the CBA.
Yeah.
I think we requested the information from their secretary.
Right.
Yeah,
Just to clear that up, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's no need for us to proceed with any further communication on this.
Yeah, that was my judgment in this matter is since we don't have a referral, we don't have anything we have to respond to, that we simply remain silent.
Okay, is that satisfactory to everyone?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds like it, and okay, that will be the course of action. 85 North Phillips Avenue, Spion.
Okay, this is an application for a subdivision that we have previously reviewed. We reviewed it last year, and we sent a response back to the planning board that referred this application to us at that time, and we had no objection to the proposed subdivision at that time. We did have a recommendation that they adopt a cluster plan, which allowed for preservation of some open space in the back, which at this point is a native predominantly oak woodland. There were no historic structures identified on the property, so we didn't have any objection to the proposed demolition of these structures, which would be part of the subdivision. This most recent application was essentially for the cluster plan that we recommended. And the only difference with this application is that the property is now identified as being in a New York State archaeological sensitive area. So what I propose to do is have essentially the same response that we did back in 2019 with the added caveat that we have an archaeological study be performed commensurate with typical practice prior to any demolition or intrusive activities of the property, and the findings of the study should be used to evaluate whether archaeological resources are present and whether further archaeological activities are warranted. So that's the recommendation at this point.
Oh, sounds good to me.
Okay. Any objections to that proposed response to the planning board?
I don't see any and or hear any, so I would agree with your plan, your plan, and communicate that back to the planning board.
Okay. Will do.
Okay. All right. Pending landmark historic district applications and outreach. 146 South Road, West Hampton. This was basically something that was inspired by, I think, the easement acquisition for a neighborhood property that there was a hint or a suggestion that maybe they might be interested. I have not received anything or heard anything from the neighborhood on this. So I think we should just keep it on the agenda just for future reference that there might be a connection to be made.
Yeah, I contacted these folks after we discussed it at a meeting. I don't think it was our last meeting, but probably the prior meeting. And they're not ready to move forward at this time, but they're still considering it. So yeah, we can leave it on.
Okay, very good. 680 Ocean Road, Bridgehampton. That's still hanging as well as to what process will be followed. Originally, this was a property in which the owner was interested in having an easement, a historic easement acquired, and this goes back about 3 years and was not successful at the time. Now that the process seems to have opened up a bit, it may be the case that there might be an opportunity here down the road. On the Bridgehampton Historic District, Julie Green and myself have been in communication. She has drafted property descriptions and history for the Hamlet Business District. Most of them, she's still working on completing it, and there's been some material back and forth between us to hopefully get a report done within 2 months or so. Madhu, we can take the Madhu work in progress off the agenda.
Do?
Under other matters, first let me just jump to 189 Lumber Lane, Bridgehampton. That house was a landmark 2 years ago, and last year a prospective buyer, late last fall I believe, stepped forward, was interested in it as it was for sale, and discussed the possibility of renovating it in some fashion. I have not heard back from that interested buyer. I have not heard back from the broker who was the agent of the seller of the house. And I've noticed that the for sale sign has come down, but I've not found excuse me, not found any property transaction history on it yet. So I would propose that we take that off the agenda as well.
Will do.
Okay, demolition and construction list update from Florida.
I sent those out on April 27th, up to date as it was. I'll add what our recommendations, our objections or not objections after this meeting, of course. So those are done. The only thing of note was the one that was at 75 Nerid Boulevard in Watermill, and they received the building permit on March 10th before we reviewed it today. And I think David had referred that on to find out why. And at this point, and then the pause happened. So I would just say at this point, I'll just make a note of it in the records. And I think the building department is busier with other things more important than this, because we didn't object to what they were going to do anyway. So.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, it's done. It's, it happened. That's it for that part.
The demolition without a permit memo, that is still out there, and I think we'll have to see how perhaps how the new management of the building department holds up with respect to the issuance of demolitions and the without a permit and without review by the Landmarks Board. So I think we can hold off on that still yet. The maintenance program for landmarks owned by nonprofits was approved.
Okay, one more, the ZBA, really quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent that. Basically, March, they were just repeats, already reviewed or no concern. April, of course, there were no meetings. I just received agendas for the ZBA for May 7th, and also for the planning board for May 14th. I assume they're going to be doing it maybe in the Zoom format. But the same thing with them, with the planning board. In fact, 1 through 29 have been adjourned. A lot of the agenda they're not even going to cover, because I guess I assume somebody requested they not even review those. And there was one, a semi-interest, but there's no house there at the point in Eastport, a 3-lot subdivision. I just sent that on to Stephanie and Bill. But also that one repeats, already reviewed, or no concern. That's it.
Okay, Susan. Thank you. As I started to say, the maintenance program for the Landmarks Board was approved by the town board. So we do have the opportunity to advertise to all 2 of the nonprofit-owned landmarks owners. One is the old mill and water mill. Excuse me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. I thought you'd be interested.
Yes, I just woke up from making my notes. No, I alert. Okay.
And I forget who I found was the
What does that mean, Ed? Sorry, could you just explain what that is?
The landmarks we had a landmarks maintenance program for owners of private residences, and we gave grants out. We gave 2 grants out this year, but it was set up originally only to allow for private homeowners who had landmark residences. This allows nonprofits who own a landmark to apply.
So like ceramics, the old mill we're talking about. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And Watermill, the old mill is owned by a civic association there. And the other one is the Goodwill, is it the Goodwill AME
AME Zion.
in Flanders? They also would qualify for applying for a grant when we set up the procedures and announce the program. So that's at least been authorized to implement, and we can do it as we want to do it in terms of timeframes and rules set out for the program. So that's down the road.
Ed, what about the North Sea Schoolhouse? I thought that was also a not-for-profit.
That, I believe, is owned by the town.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Because I went through the list on the website of all the landmarks and, you know, noted who the owners were. And those were the two that I picked up that were nonprofit landmarks.
Okay.
Yeah, Ed, you're correct. That is owned by the town.
Okay. I did one other item. We had some discussion last fall when the easement acquisition excuse me, on the property in Eleanor, is it Eleanor Cobo?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And the Community Preservation Department went ahead and drafted and executed an easement on the property. And we were questioning among ourselves as to what was our role going to be with respect to historic easement acquisitions. I had since had a communication with Lisa Combrink, who discovered after the easement was executed that there was supposed to be an advisory committee to have input on it. The advisory committee is that was set up in the original procedure some years ago. It's quite cumbersome in its membership and didn't seem to be a very workable type of thing. And she asked me what was the role of the Landmarks Board previously in easement acquisition. I said, well, basically we operated as a committee advising what were terms that were preferred for the easements. So it was left open that sometime down the road we get together and try to make the process a bit more formal and a bit clearer to everybody in order to implement easement acquisitions and their terms. I don't think, other than that, I think that's my take on everything. Anyone else have things that they want to bring up? Oh, I should mention one other matter. I have not heard any after effects of the communication I had with the architect for the William Caldwell house renovation. They were having a little kerfuffle with the building department on replacing windows. And I gave them a memo, you know, that they could show the building department that we were totally in favor of preserving the historic character and integrity of the house as built and not seeing modern code requirements applied to that. And the architect thanked me for the letter, and I assume he got his value out of it. But I don't know what the whole outcome of their discussion was. There's probably maybe one other thing that maybe Bill can just inform the board about of the appropriateness or of a certificate of appropriateness for a building permit.
Okay. Well, we had the building department contacted me asking for a COA for one of the landmarks in East Quogue, and we determined that the work was just maintenance work, repair work, and that a COA was not required in that case and would also not be required at the conclusion of the work. Would be nice to have some photographs just to document what they did and how they did it, but we wouldn't need a COA at either end. And they had also made an application for the maintenance award, so we would get an opportunity to see it at the end in order to approve the payment for that.
Okay. So I think that basically takes care of our business. Is there anything else you want to raise for Landmarks Board to consider? Except the question of when will this whole kind of business be over?
Congratulations, Ed. You did a super job. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
And everybody else.
Well, I am surprised it did turn out. I must say, back late in March, I had made an inquiry about the Southampton town subscribe to Zoom for meetings, and kind of got a message of a lack of interest, and they probably hadn't maybe even heard of Zoom at the moment. But in any case, that's where we wound up, and it certainly has worked out reasonably well given all the circumstances. So I thanks everybody for the participation and the attention and the work that went into the reports and the evaluation and the thinking that goes into those evaluations as well.
Ed, do we want to set another meeting date, or because we have no applications pending at this point, do we just want to hold off on that?
I think we should try to resume the regular meeting date that would ordinarily be used. And I'm trying to get a calendar date here that in June there would be on the 23rd, June 23rd would be the third Tuesday.
We can always have it outside if we need to.
It's actually June 16, Ed, is the third.
Oh.
Third Tuesday.
Oh, it's June 16th? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So let's aim for that for a regular meeting. And we'll, if we can have a regular meeting, we'll wait upon the work that shows up at our door to schedule a Zoom type meeting if it's necessary.
Ed, before we sign off, Charles, can you tell us if there's anybody from the public that's on listening?
No, I don't think so.
Nobody's on? Okay. I thought maybe we should just give the opportunity for anybody to ask any questions if they were listening in, but I guess.
I would always let you know if there's somebody there.
Oh, you would? Okay. All right.
Thank
Okay.
you, Charles, for organizing and listening.
Not a problem.
Yes, thanks, Charles. And
Thanks, Charles.
everybody has at least managed to look good on camera today.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, farewell all. We'll see you soon.